Impressive. All right, so this week. So firstly, I'll go on with the weekend fights. So I was able to get media access to the Kambosos uh, Jake Wyland fight. That was really good. Uh, First time doing any sort of media access type of stuff. Met some decent people there, some people from other YouTube channels and things like that. Got to sit in on some of the interviews and that. So I do have some interviews up from that fight night up on the channel. So if you want to go check them out. But thank you, TEG, for allowing me access to have media access to that fight. And it was a really good night of fights. Yeah, it was a good card. So I was happy with the whole event and pretty impressed with some of the performances on the night. Yeah, so we had the James Singh versus Terra Moana Jr. I think everyone knew that was going to be a first round finish, which it was. The ref maybe stopped it a little bit early, but still, it was only going to go one way, and I don't think James Singh was going to stay in there for too long. Um, the Nina Hughes uh, versus Johnson fight. Johnson just dominated, I think, against Nina Hughes. Very impressive, and was just dominating the fight. And Nina Hughes' corner just eventually said that was enough. She was getting punished enough. I think it was like the 7th round, maybe, off the top of my head. But yeah, that was a really good fight. Really impressive performance by Johnson. And then obviously we had Sky Nicholson versus Tiara Brown. I think that was a close fight. I thought that Tiara Brown might have edged it out. That's just from me being there watching it live. I probably wasn't paying full attention because I was doing other stuff on my laptop and things like that. But I think Tiara Brown, towards the back end of the fight, started to come on a lot stronger. And Sky Nicholson, I think, started holding a fair bit. Maybe she was a bit tired. But it could have gone either way. It was a good performance from both fighters either way. And then the main event, George Kambosos versus Jake Wyllie. Whoa, that was a good fight. That did not go the way I expected it to go. I thought Kambosos was going to end the show probably before the middle stages of the fight. But I think the only reason why it went on for the whole, 10 rounds? For the whole fight was because Jake Wyllie is just so tough. Some of the shots that he took, man, I was impressed. And he never went down or anything. So he might have been stunned a little bit with some of those shots, but yeah, he just kept on coming forward. So he's one tough opponent. And then started to come on strong towards the back end of the fight. And started to land some good shots of his own. Definitely started winning those rounds towards the back end of the fight. So which made it a more competitive fight. But Kambosos won it fairly. But yeah, I guess Jake Wyllie, now he has a contract with Matchroom, which they said they were going to sign him this Monday because of that fight. Which he deserves it because that was very impressive. I was very impressed. And yeah, my odds, like I had it against him. I didn't think he was going to perform the way he did. I thought it was going to end, more like I said, probably mid stages, probably round 6 or so, round 5. But credit to Jake Wyllie, just the toughness of him got him through that fight. Yep, so we had Sky Nicholson, who now does not have the WBC title because that went on to Tiara Brown, who now goes on 19-0. So decent record, Tiara Brown. And in the interviews, Tiara Brown said that she would consider a rematch with Sky Nicholson. So I think they might have a rematch clause anyway. So I'm pretty sure that fight will be happening. And I think there was talk of that fight potentially happening on the Kambosos fight. So we might see that fight again repeated on the Kambosos fight when Kambosos potentially fights Hitchins. Which it was a close fight. I just think Tiara Brown might have just edged out Nicholson. Nicholson probably got a bit tired towards the end and started holding a bit too much. And Tiara Brown started catching her with a few shots. But it could have gone either way, I think. So, yeah, Kambosos, I think he impressed enough with his sharpness and everything else. I think the only doubt would have been fighting more of a domestic level fighter, but the way that Jake Wyllie fought and his toughness, you can't really hold that against Kambosos because he fought a tough opponent. I think a lot of other domestic fighters going up against Kambosos and taking those shots, they probably wouldn't have lasted as long as Jake Wyllie lasted. But also the adrenaline and the big night, and Jake Wyllie was focused and ready for this. So, and he's proved himself even though he lost the fight. So yeah, Jake Wyllie goes to 16-2 after that fight, and who knows, maybe he'll fight on the Kambosos Hitchins fight when that gets made. If that gets made, I'm pretty sure it's going to get made. Eddie Hearn pretty much confirmed it on the night. He said Hitchins and Kambosos is going to be the next fight for either of the fighters. And considering Hitchins is with Matchroom, that should be a done deal as long as the negotiations go well between both parties, which I don't think will be an issue. I think that the date is the 22nd of June from memory. I think that's what they said in the media conference. But yeah, that's going to be a good fight. So talking about that fight, Kambosos, Hitchins, I said this before in the last Midweek Madness last week. I think Kambosos fighting Hitchins, I think he has to approach the fight like he did against Devin Haney in the second fight. Because Hitchins has that very technical style where he sits behind his jab and just works off the jab. So he's going to be very technical, Hitchins. And I think Kambosos has to sort of break his rhythm and, yeah, try and just upset the rhythm of Hitchins to be able to get in close and land some big shots. So it's going to be an interesting one. But if I was George Kambosos' camp and team, I would be looking back at that Devin Haney second fight that they had, and prepare like you did for that fight, because I think that's probably the best way you're going to succeed. And I mean, Kambosos is saying that Devin Haney is a better fighter than Hitchins, even though he hasn't met Hitchins yet or in the ring. But still, I think he's probably right there. So why not prepare like you did for Devin Haney in that second fight? and I think Kambosos had a lot more success in the second fight, but fell short, obviously, because of Haney's skills and just working behind the jab, and started landing some good shots, and just won the fight off that technical aspect. So that's how I would approach it. But I think it'll be a good fight, and I guess we'll see how that goes. So I think it's 22nd of June, or it could be the 28th of June. So there was 2 dates thrown around, but we'll see what happens when that deal gets done, and that gets confirmed, and confirm the actual date of that. I think Kambosos' dad was trying to push for the 28th of June to try and give him a bit more time to recover from the cut that he got from the Jake Wyllie fight. Kambosos did receive a cut, and after the fight they mentioned how they glued it, so it wasn't a vicious cut, I suppose. So they've glued it, and I think he's got like at least a month with no contact. So that's going to be, it'll give him enough time to be able to prepare and start sparring and get ready for that Hitchins fight, I think. But yeah, looking forward to that one. And then moving on to Sunday, another big weekend of boxing. So we had Sebastian Fundora finally fighting after 12 months, and he took on Booker. So Shordell Booker. Yeah, I was impressed with Sebastian Fundora's how he came out and won that fight. I think it was the 4th round he knocked out Booker. And after a 12-month layoff, I thought Sebastian Fundora fought really well. And I think the thing that I liked about Fundora fighting was the fact that he was finally using his height, using his jab, sticking behind that jab, and using that length of his and that reach of his. But then also variations with his shots, but still trying to pick those uppercuts at the right time and other combinations. But it all came off the jab. And even another thing that I liked as well is when he did throw those combinations, he reset and came back to his jab. So through those combinations, uppercuts, hooks, body shots, whatever it was, and then reset, and then came back and used his length again and started throwing the jab. So I think, although it was 12 months ago, but I think that would have been a takeaway from the Tszyu fight. Although it was a bloody battle, I think what Sebastian Fundora did well was once Tszyu was cut, he just boxed him. He just used his jab, used his height, because there was no reason to get in close when a guy's got blood streaming down his face. He's already blind, so you may as well stay on the outside. And I think he might have realized from that, well, this is probably a better way of fighting, considering I'm a giant, I'm such a tall guy. And he actually used that style against Booker, and it was impressive. Rowie, I really think Tim was giving it to him before the cut. Yeah, I had another look at that fight today or yesterday, I think it was. I had a look at it, and yeah, Tim was giving it to him for sure. And just those scoring shots as well. The right hand of Tim was scoring, and he was throwing that on many occasions and making the head of Fundora knock back. So Tim, unfortunately, because of that cut, the way he was having success, I think it could have potentially been a stoppage if it was going the way that it was going. And the success that he was having, because it was only that cut that just changed everything. But then, yeah, credit to Fundora. What do? You continue to fight. Obviously, someone's bleeding, and you take advantage of it, and that's what he did. And even then, even although Tim was cut, it was still impressive how he adapted. The blood was streaming down the face. It was hard for him to see. He lost maybe 3 or 4 rounds, but then started to come on and started landing shots again. So that's what impressed me with the fight with Tszyu. It was the fact that he just he had that blood coming down, but then he just adapted to it, and it was a split decision win for Fundora. So that just goes to show how close the fight was, even though Tim was blinded for most of the fight. But yeah, Fundora, yep, good win. Unified champion still, so he retains his belts. And that was, I think, an impressive fight after 12 months layoff. But I want to see him fight more now. There's other people in the division. I think he's got a mandatory challenger now. I can't remember the name of the guy, but I think it might be one of his titles anyway. WBO, I think it might be. He's got a mandatory challenge for. But if I was him, I mean, I think he's like what 24 or so, or 27. So he's 27. He's still young, and I think you should be looking at unifying those other belts, and look at undisputed. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't be looking at undisputed. Yeah, you're going to have mandatories come up, and you just take them on, but aim for those other belts and try to get undisputed. So that's what I think Sebastian Fundora should be aiming for. But the boogeyman division now, I think, is Bakram Murtazaliev. The way that he beat Tim, I think he's going to find it hard. Xander. Yep. Thanks, mate. Xander. Yeah, so that's his mandatory challenger. But yeah, Bakram Murtazaliev, I think Bakram Murtazaliev is going to find it hard to get an opponent because he's a bit of a boogeyman now, the way that he beat Tim. And I did go back and look at that fight, and I don't know, he's going to be a hard guy to beat just because of his output. And even his previous fights, he throws a lot of shots, and I think that was the issue with Tim. Yep, he had a lot of probably other technical issues, and he wasn't really focusing on Bakram Murtazaliev. He was trying to get the knockout himself. His hands were low. He was coming in with his hands down, like after shots. He was leaving his hands out there. But just the output of Bakram, I think, if it was another fighter, yeah, Tim might have gotten through it and been able to survive and then maybe come back even better. But because Bakram Murtazaliev has so much output, he just keeps on coming on. So that's the challenge. Thought he was just going to Campo him. Yeah, well, I think Tim thought he was going to as well. But yeah, you can't. I think that's a big learning curve for Tim as well. That you can't go looking for the knockout. I mean, I think Tim's best attributes is probably his counter shots. The way that he stalks his fighters is good. Like he stalks them, but then he tries to use the counter. And that's what I like about his style. But with that fight, yeah, he was trying to Ocampo him, but without success. And unfortunately, the reverse happened. But yeah, and that's the next thing. What happens in the next fight against Spencer? I'm kind of concerned about Tim taking on Spencer, because he's no mug. He's a good fighter. He's a good, tough, young fighter. So it's definitely going to be challenging, because after getting knocked out like that, you kind of want a confidence builder. You want a fight that you are almost pretty certain you're going to win, just to build up that confidence. But he hasn't had that. So I don't know. I don't know about the way they've just going back in there with pretty much a top contender. To me, that I feel that's a bit risky after being knocked out the way that Tim did. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how he goes. Hopefully, he can go back to Tim of old. But it's not the route I would do. I'd give him a confidence builder if I was his team. He fought Mendoza well after Ocampo. If he goes in with that approach, will be good. Yeah. Yeah, and he did fight Mendoza well, but he wasn't coming off a loss. I think that's the problem. It's not that he's not at that level with Spence, and I think he is a better fighter than Spence. I think it's pretty close between them, but I think Tim Tszyu before getting stopped, and yeah, I think that fighter beats Spencer. but we haven't seen the fighter after being knocked out and being punished the way that he did. So it's a big mental hurdle that he needs to. We need to see where he is, where his head is at, because that's what it is. It's a mental thing. Because is he going to be timid? Is he going to be worried? If I'm Spencer and his team, I'm coming out all guns blazing. I'm coming out and I'm just trying to disrupt him, because just offset him because of the way that he lost. You don't want him to settle into the fight. You want to try and like get him off guard straight away. So that's how I'd approach it if I was Spencer's team. And for Tim, I think he has to settle into the fight. He has to take his time. He has to still go back to the way that he does things. Yep, still do your stalking approach, but just be very wary. Make sure you're using your jab, your guards up, and go back to those very technical counter shots where you're stalking and you're trying to get your opponent to throw something, and you're countering them. That's what he would want to be doing, and he'd want to settle the fight down. So where I think it'd be the opposite for Spence. He's going to want to just disrupt Tim straight away because of the way that because he has to mentally get into the game. I think mentally get into the fight. It's going to take him probably a couple of rounds after losing the way he did. And he hasn't had a build-up fight, like a confidence builder. So that's just the way that I see it anyway, from either side. But it's going to be a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I'm barracking for Tim. Hopefully he does well, and we see Tim Tszyu of old before being stopped in his last fight. So yeah, there we go. Tszyu, Spence. So looking at comparing records, so we've got 24-2, obviously with that knockout and that loss that he lost to the Towering Inferno, Sebastian Fundora. And I mean, you can say you shouldn't count that as a loss, but it was a loss. It was unfortunate with the cut, but it was still a loss. And yeah, that Bakram Adesanya fight, that was another concerning thing, is when Tim stopped and he thought he was cut, and he was trying to feel and look for blood. So, and that just comes back to that whole mental thing as well. Like you go through these things in fights, it takes a bit of time to sort of get through them. So hopefully you can get through both of them in the next fight. Yep, so Tim 24-2, and then we have Spence 19-1 with 11 KOs, and Tim with 17 KOs. So Tim's definitely got a higher KO ratio than Spence, so he's definitely the bigger puncher considering the opponents that he's fought. So if Tim takes his time and starts going back to the way he was, just go back to the drawing board, go back to your stalking ways and yeah, your counter shots, and eventually, hopefully, the right shot will come, and then you can throw the right combinations off that shot if you hurt Spence. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be a good fight. And Spence is tough, so that's another thing as well. Can Tim stop him? I don't know. He's a tough fighter. You're probably looking at it going the distance. So you're going to want to rack up them points, I think. And another fight that we have on that same weekend is Joe Joyce versus Filip Hrgovic. That's going to be an interesting fight, the heavyweights. And considering both of them are kind of on the downslide, I think it's probably the perfect time for these two to clash. So it's going to be an interesting one. And these heavyweight clashes are always entertaining. Who knows what way it's going to go? Is Joe Joyce going to come back and impress again? Or will Filip Hrgovic get back to the way that he was before he got beaten by Triple D? I'd probably be going for Hergovic. I think he would probably. I think he's a better fighter. I just think Joe Joyce is, although he's a strong puncher, he's a tough fighter. He's just too slow. His punches are just too slow. So yeah, Hergovic, I think can take advantage of those slow shots and be able to catch him because it just yeah, I just and I thought the same when Triple D way back fought Joe Joyce. I thought Triple D was the better fighter, but unfortunately because of that swollen eye, Triple D took a knee and the fight was ended. And I think he had a broken orbital bone or something like that. But I still felt like Triple D was a better fighter just because of Joe Joyce's speed. Even for a heavyweight, he just to me he's a very slow puncher, and which makes it easy for him to get caught with shots. So I think Hergovic wins it and then comes back. And Hergovic is, I think he's the younger fighter as well. What's Joyce? Yeah, Joe Joyce is 39. So, I mean, he's almost pushing 40. Hergovic, 32. So, I mean, he's not a spring chicken, but still, he's not nowhere near as old as Joe Joyce. And those shots are only going to slow down for Joe Joyce as he gets older. So, he was already pretty slow with those punches. They're powerful shots, but they're just slow. That's all. So then we have Jankovic versus Annual. So this is going to be on the same weekend, I think it is. So these two are fighting. I only really know Jankovic, so I don't really know this other guy. But there we go. There's his record there: 14 fights, 9 KOs. So I have heard that he's supposed to be a pretty devastating puncher. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge for Jankovic. But Jankovic's a decent fighter, classy fighter, and also is a big puncher himself. So that's going to be an interesting one as well. So see what happens with that one. But I think that's all on the same weekend. I think that's all in the 12th of April, I believe. So not this weekend, next weekend, I think it is. Let's have a look at the date. No, not the 12th of April. Where's the date? Uh, 6th of April, yeah. So I was thinking of the weekend after that. So 6th of April is Tszyu fight. Maybe it's the following weekend, the heavyweight, I'm thinking of Joe Joyce and Hergovic. But anyway, either way, it's going to be, we've got some good fights coming up. So yeah, I wanted to do a live stream of the Tszyu fight. I will still try to do a live stream of the Tszyu fight. I'm supposed to be working that weekend. I don't know if I can get out of it, but I'm going to try, and then hopefully do a live stream of that. Because I'm going to be pretty disappointed if I can't at least watch the fight, let alone do a live stream. But if I can, I'll find out, and then I'll put it up. I'll put up the live stream so people are tracking that I'm going to be doing a live stream. But that's pretty much it for the fights that are coming up and the fights that have happened. Yeah, it was a good weekend of fights. It was a really good experience to actually go and be a part of the media and actually sit in on the interviews, the post-fight interviews. Got to go to the weigh-in, which was good as well. I didn't do any interviewing myself. It was pretty easy because a lot of the other guys that were there, they were asking most of the questions. But I think next time I'll aim to try and ask some questions of my own, have some questions down, and yeah, try and get some responses from questions that I have. And if I do get another media pass for any of these shows that come up, again, if you guys want to ask questions, I'll just post something up, and you can just ask questions on my posts. But I'll hit you guys up and say, hey, what questions do you guys want to ask? And if you have any questions, just hit me up. But I haven't got anything lined up at the moment, but I'll be sure to let you know once I do. But yeah, anyway, that's all. I've really got good weekend of boxing, good experience with the media stuff, and we have more fights coming up. Looking forward to the Tszyu fight. It's probably the one I'm looking forward to next. Should be a good one. Anyway, that's Midweek Madness for this Wednesday, and I'll aim to do it again next Wednesday. So thanks guys for tuning in. Thanks for the comments as well. So keep the comments going for these live streams. It helps the live stream when I have questions and people commenting and stuff like that. I appreciate it. Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.